When you think of a composer from the 1700s, you probably picture some serious guy in a powdered wig, right? And yeah, that was part of it. But George Friedrich Handel, he was so much more. He was a superstar, an innovator, and a seriously smart businessman. Basically, he was the original music mogul. But that raises a big question. How does music from 3 centuries ago stay so popular? Why are we still hearing Handel's stuff in movies, at big events, and especially around the holidays? Well, let's get into his story and find out. Every great story has an origin, and Handel's starts with a secret. Long before he was a household name, he was just a kid with a passion he literally had to hide from his own family.
Okay, so picture this. You're a kid back in Germany in the late 1600s. Your dad is a big-shot surgeon, and he's got your whole life planned out. You're going to be a lawyer. End of story. But all you want to do is make music. So what do? Well, if you're Handel, you smuggle a clavichord, which is basically a super quiet early piano, up into the attic so you can practice without anyone knowing. His secret was safe for a while until a powerful duke happened to hear him play, and he immediately told Handel's dad, "You can't ignore a talent like this." So, with his father's very reluctant permission, Handel was finally free to chase his dream. But he knew that to be the best, he had to go learn from the best. His real journey was just kicking off.
After getting his start in Germany and writing his very first opera in Hamburg, Handel made a huge career move. In 1706, he packed his bags for Italy. Now, at the time, Italy was the absolute center of the music universe. You can think of it like a young filmmaker moving to Hollywood today. But his final stop would be London, a city he was about to completely take over.
Italy was where he really soaked up the drama and emotion of Italian opera. He figured out how to write these huge, powerful melodies that could tell an epic story and really connect with an audience. This is what turned him from just a talented musician into a true international star.
So, armed with all these new skills, Handel showed up in London in 1712. The city was booming, it was wealthy, and people were hungry for entertainment. It was the perfect place for a composer with big plans. And he didn't just visit, he made London his home. Handel became a British citizen, got in good with the royal family, and suddenly had a ton of influence and financial security. This freedom allowed him to be more than just a composer. He became a real musical entrepreneur.
He was essentially running a major production company. First, he was a talent scout, traveling all over Europe to recruit the best singers, the biggest superstars of the day. Then he had to write hit after hit. On top of that, he was managing enormous budgets for crazy sets and costumes and dealing with all the drama that comes with celebrity talent. He pretty much single-handedly put London on the map as a global capital for opera.
But you know how it is. Tastes change. After years of success, the public in London started getting a little bored with Italian opera. A lesser artist might have just faded out, but Handel was a genius at adapting. It was time for his next act. He pivoted to something called the oratorio. The easiest way to think of it is like a blockbuster movie for your ears. It's got all the drama of an opera, a huge orchestra, a big choir, amazing solo singers. But it's performed like a concert. No expensive sets, no costumes, no acting. It's all about pure musical storytelling. Now this was an absolutely brilliant business move. The oratorios were in English, so a lot more people could understand them, especially the growing middle class. They were based on famous biblical stories people already knew, and maybe most importantly, they were way cheaper to produce. In one move, Handel found a brand new audience and a much smarter business model. This massive reinvention led to some of the most famous music ever written. So let's take a look at a few of his masterpieces and the incredible stories that go with them. First up, water music. The king wanted a concert for a party he was having on the River Thames, so Handel puts 50 musicians on a barge floating right next to the royal boat. The music had to be big and loud enough to be heard over the water, and wow, it was a huge hit. King George loved it so much, he made them play the whole thing over and over all night long.
24. That's it. That's the number of days it took Handel to compose his most famous work ever, Messiah. We're talking over 2.5 hours of incredibly complex music for a full orchestra, a choir, and soloists, all written in less than a month. It's just a mind-blowing burst of creativity.
And Messiah, which features that world-famous Hallelujah chorus, became something much bigger than just a piece of music. Handel was a really generous guy, and he often used the money from Messiah performances to support charities, like a hospital for abandoned kids. He turned his greatest artistic success into a powerful way to do good in the world. Then you've got his music for the royal fireworks. This was for a massive national party to celebrate the end of a war.
The music was spectacular. The fireworks, on the other hand, well, they accidentally set the giant wooden stage on fire and everybody panicked. But even with all that chaos, Handel's music was still seen as a huge triumph.
So, what made his music so good at telling a story? Well, one of his key techniques was something called word painting. It's a really cool and simple idea. The music literally paints a picture of what the words are saying. So if the lyrics are about rising up to heaven, the notes of the melody will actually go up. It makes the whole story just come alive in your head.
Handel worked right up until the very end of his life, and he created so much powerful and influential music that his place in history was already locked in long before he was even gone.
Even after he lost his sight later in life, his passion never quit. He kept on performing and composing all from memory. When he died in 1759, he was so loved and respected that he was buried in Westminster Abbey. That's the highest honor the nation could possibly give. Over 3,000 people showed up for his funeral.
His influence on the composers who came after him was just massive. I mean, don't just take it from me. Beethoven himself, another giant of music, said it best. When Beethoven calls you the master, you know you've done something pretty special. And his legacy is still all around us. His piece, Zadok the Priest, has been played at every single British coronation for almost 300 years. He inspired generations of composers, from Mozart to Beethoven, and that dramatic, emotional style is exactly why his music still fits so perfectly in movie soundtracks and commercials today. He really did create a timeless sound.
So Handel was an artist, an entertainer, and a revolutionary entrepreneur who created music that has lasted for centuries. Which kind of makes you wonder, right? Whose music from our time will people still be listening to 300 years from now?